Okay, welcome everybody. I think we're uh, off and running already, so hopefully we will not bore you too bad today, but we'll see what happens. Last presentation before we kick off the festivities tonight, it sounds like. So that's always a rough position to be in. Better than first thing the next morning, though. So. As the title says, this is kind of our story of transitioning from homegrown to the cloud. It borders on the technical side of how we bridged the gap and the skill sets we had to learn that were new, coming from a completely homegrown system that is our legacy SIS still, and basically kind of some of the things that we had to do and to get from point A to point B. Definitely, if there's any questions, feel free to interrupt me at any time. I've left some time at the end for questions, but I'm the type of presenter that if you interrupt me and it's collaborative, it's even better. So we'll try kicking off here. So for those of you who don't know about Pittsburg State, this is a quick intro for that. We're about 6,000 students, Southeast Kansas and Pittsburg, about 800 faculty and staff. So my team's background, I'm the, I guess technically the director of implementation and our director of development and implementation. So we maintain our homegrown system that we have, and we also implement any third-party products that come to campus. So if it's third-party and or we maintain it internally, that falls to my team. That homegrown system still has code in it from 1979. I think we beat the lady that was in the presentation before by a few years there. And I think it was 80, somewhere in the mid 80s, I think is what she had mentioned. So, so we do still have some code running from that. We're down to our last piece now that we transitioned away from SFP or from financial aid to go to Oracle Student Financial Planning. Got to be careful with the acronyms. They drill those things into you. But I have a team of 8. We used to be about a team of 13. I think several years ago, and that's just kind of through attrition. I'm sure you guys have the same issues we do in terms of trying to find good IT folks in the state of Kansas, but maybe not. Maybe you guys have some magic bullet solution there. I don't know, but we've been very fortunate to have people for quite some time though, and I've got one team member that's promised me she's not going to retire until we get the SIS implemented next year. So she's been with us with the university for over 40 years and the IT department for quite some time too. She's definitely awesome. Previously, we'd maintained HR, finance, financial aid, SIS. That was all in our homegrown solution in-house. But in 2015, we started transitioning to Oracle Cloud with HR and finance. I think we were some of their first higher ed customers that were on that system. I think we were the first that actually did those implementations in parallel. Most of the other universities that we were talking with at that time they were either working on finance or they were working on HCM. But you know, we don't like to wait around on things, so we just charge right in, I guess. But we survived that, and it's been a few years since we've implemented those. And so it was March of 22, I think we started our SFP implementation. This last year's been last couple of years have been a blur. And so we went live in 23 on student financial planning. And we're already in, I think, our App 1 preview of the new Oracle student system. We just saw here in April with some of our data and our initial configuration in it. So we've actually seen our first glimpse of what our future will be, hopefully early enrollment 25 in April. So we're less than a year from our first part of the go live on that system as well. So been a little bit crazy. I'm hoping to live till 26, but we'll see what happens. So that's kind of our background on things. I did have a question. See, I meant to remove in the app. You caught me. I'm reusing some slides from an earlier presentation. But I did want to leave this question in, just kind of in the room. Our IT support is more Jack of Jill of all trades. We don't have anybody dedicated for any individual area. So whenever we do an implementation, we have to kind of definitely partner up, get embedded, and make that happen for them. And our folks are Jack and Jill of all trades. Anybody in here have a different story than that? You have functional technical that are kind of with them, or do you have dedicated IT folks? I know some institutions have, they've got a team for financial aid and they take care of them, but we're not currently set up like that yet.
We used to be more siloed into where we had a couple of developers for financial aid, a couple for student records, a couple for admissions, a couple for student finance, for HR, a couple for, but we're trying now to go back, get rid of the silos. But that's really difficult when you haven't done it that way in the past.
Sure. We actually went through that before. Actually, just as I was hired, they had 4 teams that were split up, and I was hired as one of the group managers for those teams back in the day. And we transitioned from those silos to where we are now. And it's been a really good experience once we got there. It was a culture shift for our users and for us. And you never totally get out of wearing a hat of being an expert of a certain system just because, it's a natural thing. But one thing we really focused on there is that if I was the expert in HCM, if it was an emergency, that we routed them all through our ticketing system. If it was emergency, that would immediately get sent to me because I know it, and then I'd take care of that. But they would never knew that was sent to me at that point. And so they were just thinking, oh, it's being serviced really quickly. I just need to submit these tickets because that's the fastest way to get things done. We might have maybe on non-emergencies, maybe routed those to people that didn't know something, and we would still pair them with the person that was the expert to get that cross-training involved. And depending on that, then we would have that person even sometimes communicate back with them on purpose to know, oh, my problem was solved by somebody else that I don't even know. And so just lesson learned from our side of things on that, not really pertinent.
Some of our areas have funky techs in them, but not all of them.
Okay. We're actually starting to move towards a kind of a funky tech model. And we've hired our first functional analyst. They kind of tried it embedded with the department, but for some reason that didn't quite work out. And I kind of get the feeling the reason that it didn't is because they were a technical person surrounded by functional people. And that collaboration, they kind of felt like they were on an island out there, even though we reached out to them from central IT, anything you need, we're ready to collaborate, but it's just a little bit different with that. So our latest hire that we've done with that actually is going to report in on my team just because there wasn't a better fit within our department. And we're going to see how that model works. They'll also be embedded part of the time with the functional folks, but they'll actually report to IT, and we can make sure that support is there for them.
The ones we have were in the functional office originally, and then they kind of grew into ending up being in a kind of a function position.
Okay.
Where they write, we have the PeopleSoft.
Okay, yeah.
The one you have.
Yeah.
With your implemented.
Right.
And they write their own online queries that way.
Awesome.
You kind of go to that person first if they have an issue. instead of coming to IT. first.
Yeah, no, that's something that we're actually, the model that we're looking at trying to implement and follow to kind of give them that first line of things. So anybody else? Don't want to spend a ton of time on it, just kind of want to know my audience a little bit, so. Okay, great. So I'm just going to hit on a few different things. I'll probably go rush through the configuration management a little bit because it may not be as pertinent, and get onto some of the other pieces that we built around. We actually had to build a fairly significant bolt-on for the Oracle financial aid around scholarships. And from what we understand, there's not a lot of scholarship systems out there that really handle this. And we even asked implementation partners, hey, do you have a solution here? Or have you seen any products that can be bought and bolted on? And they're kind of like, no, there's not really a good solution out there. And so, so we built one, and we said we actually have a fairly strong relationship with Oracle at this point, owning several of their products and being one of their first to implement student. I joke with them every time I see them, somebody up in their organization to say, hey, why don't you just build something like this? That way we don't have to maintain it. So, I'll probably breeze through these pieces a little bit. I'll hit on the technology because some of the stuff was things that we had to learn, and other stuff is stuff that was very familiar to us. We're .NET developers, so we work in Visual Studio almost every day. Our implementation partner suggested that we use Visual Studio Code for the Groovy scripting for this, and that was a very natural fit. Different environment. We decided not to try to retro it into Visual Studio. We just keep them separate. Right tool, right job, basically. So we really just use two different environments, but we do leverage our Azure tenant and our DevOps and our Git repository for source control, because the configurations for this, they almost border on customizations in my mind. They're not, but they're configuration heavy, not configuration light for sure. And so these are just a few extensions that we ended up using within Visual Studio Code to take care of the Groovy syntax highlighting, and also some tools for dealing with the CSV configuration files, because with Oracle, there's a combination of both. And most of the folks in here, unless you're on the dev side of the shop, source control, that sort of thing. I'll touch briefly on it as the importance in here, but I won't go heavy into it. And then lastly on the slide, I'll touch on Oracle Integration Cloud, which is another Oracle product that we ended up using in one of the better data platforms that we've used to actually automate integrations in a visual way. And it's there's tons of them out there now, but like Boomi and other places that other products that help you move data from one place to another. The Oracle one, they had a really good implementation, we thought, and it made connecting to some of the Oracle endpoints just super simple. So it's like, we're a small shop. We need to save time. We'll purchase that tool. It's been well worth its money. So if you haven't seen Visual Studio Code before, that's what this is. I mainly included this in my slides at the other conference that I presented this with too. We also had it was a user group type thing. So there were actually people there that were interested. So I stuck these in the slides. So if they really wanted this for their site, they could utilize it. But I'll just kind of throw through these. But this is actually part of the configuration of our live tenant, and this is the Groovy scripting. Java developers, it ought to look familiar to, but it is Groovy, and it really drives a lot of the business rules within the financial aid system. They deliver defaults, but you can customize that. Luckily, with my team being an implementation team as well as a dev team, we took to it pretty well. But I could see it being a little daunting for an implementation team that was not had dev experience anyway, because there is the testing cycle on it is not the most fun thing in the world. And this is just another one of the tools we used. It actually, this one, some of us prefer, other people don't like it because of the mixed word salad that it becomes. But the nice thing is you can hover over any CSV value, and it has the appropriate column header that shows up right above the value, so you can go in and edit it. So you can edit it almost as simple as like an Excel sheet, but you don't have to worry about any of the funky formatting. That's one reason we use this, but it looks a little daunting. More people would prefer this plug-in tool to do the same thing. The only problem is that we had some issues when you go to apply and save changes for it doing some weird character stuff sometimes. May have been a bug or a version thing whenever it saves the CSV back to the other format. So. And the DevOps piece, the only reason I put this in here is that that's what we use for our source control. It also, Microsoft made it easy for us to clone in Visual Studio, so our repos just become file systems on on our local dev machine, and anybody can download it. The repo structure and stuff itself, we have 3 environments that we have to keep track of. And so we actually have different directory folders, and we promote those from test to QA to prod. And we keep our edits versus baseline, and I'll talk about that a little bit. I'll gloss over it because it's really Oracle specific stuff. So I got ahead of myself. I knew I would do that. So Oracle delivers a baseline every quarter of the configuration and all the changes. They also give you the quarterly updates and everything, but we actually lay their baselines over top of each other in our source control, and the Visual Studio Code shows us all the differences of what may or may not been in the release notes. So that helps us know if we've changed parts of configuration with it, that we can then make sure that our scripts that are in our edits folders are up to date, or maybe we need to incorporate that because we've made Pitt State specific edits to it. So that's just kind of our structure on, and the last part of that is they also have a reporting engine that's connected to it, and that's called BI Publisher, and it's across all their product suites. And since we're maintaining our configs here, we just use it as a repository to back up those folders, because when they wipe out production to test copies and things like that, they can wipe out reports. So we keep other backups in this repo as well. And this really is just a slide that shows that whether I'm in Visual Studio Code, whether I'm in my file explorer on the local system, or whether I'm in Azure, our Azure code repository, it's the same file structure all the way down through it. And the only difference is that you can see dates and stuff on the right-hand side. So all that stuff's versioned. So every change we make to the config, we commit that change as that change, and we can go back and look over time then, just like with our regular source code that we do for any of our in-house development. We do that with these configs too, as they change, because like I said, Oracle issues updates every quarter. So we've got to have a way of making sure those changes won't impact our running system. So I'm going to briefly touch on Oracle Integration Cloud. I am not trying to make this an Oracle sales presentation, but their integration cloud was really slick in terms of how it's set up, and it's not specific to Oracle either. You can we use it to access an on-prem SQL database in our personal cloud, I guess, on campus. And some of those flows will hit that SQL database. They'll transform that data into a web service hit and push that out into their systems. And we can trigger that programmatically from a place. They can be scheduled. There's just all kinds of stuff that you can do with it. And this is a very limited implementation that we've used it for, but it solves some very complex issues for us. And the whole thing is designed around graphically, which makes it sometimes annoying, sometimes nice, depends on how much of a command line person you are. But they've done a pretty good job of implementing this piece of it. There's a couple of quirks that we've noticed as coders that they could improve upon, which they have a new version out actually now. But for the most part, it was really intuitive and slick to get in. And so this particular one accepts a web service post from an on-prem server from our SIS, our current homegrown SIS. And then it loops through what's called basically the student information record that posts all their enrollment, things like that, into the financial aid system. And then it actually updates a SQL record back on our in-prem database to say, hey, that record was sent, so that we have that updated in real time then. And this is just an example of the mapping from the one message. So the incoming API hit, the web hit on the left, and you can map that to the outgoing post that hits the Oracle's REST endpoint. And it's all visual, but you can also, on the right-hand side, you can basically put in defaults, or you can do transforms or whatever you need to in between those data sets. And it makes things really, really nice. The nice thing is that Oracle had XSDs for their endpoints, for the REST endpoints, and we could just import those, and it gave us all the mapping that we could map to then, which was really cool. It saved us a lot of time. But one of the best things about this actually is the logging and debugging. You can actually turn on full payload logging, and it will, if it fails, it'll have that stuff in there too. But it's even better when it's successful, because you can drill into and actually see the payload that was in any of the mappings. You can see the payload that was sent out to a web service. So you can see the payload that comes back, the response from it. So you can get really detailed and see exactly what happens at each stage. And then most of the time you have that turned off, because otherwise you're just gathering a bunch of extra data. Although I haven't really seen that impact a lot of performance in anything there. So this is the part that I think is a little bit more fun to talk about, because this was a homegrown solution that we had to come up with. And it wasn't really necessarily to what I would call an Oracle deficiency. It seems like a deficiency in the industry as a whole, but I'm sure it's because everybody does stuff differently. I mean, I don't know about other institutions, but our foundation, I think there's about, I don't know, 1,600 to 2,000 different active scholarships that they assign to different students. And it's not assigned by financial aid. It's assigned by the math professor and department. Why? You know, it really just is whoever. And our homegrown solution before that, pretty modern. This is our screen out of our old system. I don't know if this one dates quite back as far as 79, but and we did lay some stuff over the top of that to at least make it so that it was usable in our legacy web system. But even it looks really dated these days compared to a lot of modern stuff. And so between the green screen and this, our foundation folks maintained all the scholarship definitions, things like that. And then the system would actually pull students that were eligible for their respective scholarships for the approved scholarship awarder to then go and pick and choose who they wanted to award these scholarships to. So one of the things that they didn't want to lose out on is the applicant selection criteria was fairly complicated for a lot of these things. And as much as everybody wants to try to keep that stuff simple, to give money to as many students as they can, you know, you're still going to have those donors that I want somebody that attends basketball games on the third Thursday of the month where the popcorn machine's broken or something, you know, and as long as you got the data, I guess you can pull it. But that, some of the stuff got a little bit crazy. In our old system, it was still on those green screens, and it had some static fields and stuff with a bunch of different criteria in it. And so they didn't want to lose that. But at the same time, we're looking at it as you know, modern programming developers, and going, we've got to find a way to make this more generic, rules-based engine type thing, and all of that kind of stuff. But we did maintain the complicated criteria, and we wanted the maintenance of awarding by financial aid at that point still needed to be in place in the new system. And then being able to provide those qualified applicants to the departments. And it needed to be compatible with our new Oracle's new non-federal funds award loader, which was the way that they allow you to get basically non-federal institutional aid into their system. And the easy part, just have it ready to go in a few months to get that ready for the new system. So what we ended up doing is basically building a new interface, new data structures, everything over top of the requirements that we had from both the foundation and our financial aid office. And so this is just one of the scholarship definition screens that allows them to basically say who's authorized to award this, and what's all the different particulars, such as the accounting and all that kind of fun stuff to go back in. And then we built a whole new rules engine that would allow them to add, the criteria has to be defined, because obviously it has to know where to go and get that from whatever system. But we made that so it could go to our legacy SIS, or it could go out to anywhere that data happened to live. And as long as they wanted to, you know, make a rule on it, if the GPA needs to be a certain amount, they could make that rule, whatever the case may be. And then we also built in so that they could do preferences the same way, so that whoever was getting the list of qualified applicants could have the people that met the requirements, and then also met any preferences that they had. And so then our new scholarship selection just would give them a list of the math professor in the department could go in and pull up his scholarships that he has access to award for, and it would give him a list of students that qualify, give them relevant information, automatically include the fields that were required to qualify, and any additional fields that they specified that they wanted for all scholarships then. And they could also reference the scholarship info and find out how much was still left to award, and all that kind of fun stuff. So to wire it up to SFP, then we had all that data, all the scholarships are awarded. We had to learn how to get all that stuff in there, and it's also based on creating the 4 configuration files that I've got listed. I won't dive too much into that because that gets into Oracle specific stuff again. But basically, we had to have a system. We wrote another program that would analyze the data from the definitions of the scholarships and translate that into SFP's disbursement rules for those. And that was probably the trickiest part, because it actually then limits within the system. If it requires a GPA of 3.0 and they got awarded that scholarship, but then before disbursement, new things pass, other things happen. If that no longer applies, it will hold that disbursement up for financial aid to review in the disbursement rules. And any fund that goes in, you can have any number of disbursement rules, and it displays right there. The problem is those disbursement rule logic is that those are actually Groovy scripts again. So it's part of that. So if I change that stuff, I've got to have a new script that does that. Well, the interlude program that we wrote actually builds those scripts, puts them into our structure that is there, and then we can just, all we have to do is deploy them, test them, and we're good to go. So we don't do a lot of hand coding for any of those disbursement things unless we make a new template for a new criteria type. So, and I touched on this a little bit earlier too, is that they have quarterly updates in the new system, sometimes monthly. They have maintenance packs. But the quarterlies are if they release features or things, and some of them are opt-in, some of them are updates to functionality due to regulations or whatnot, or bug fixes, that kind of stuff. And we've been used to it a little bit on the HCM and finance side because we've been on those products, but those are usually more opt-in. These are a little bit more maintenance intensive because they can affect those config files and or the scripting. And so we really have to review these a lot closer than we did the HCM or finance. And so we're also looking at more of a global strategy, I think, for our university, since we're going to be on all Oracle products and they're all going to be on these quarterly maintenance cycles, which will be a good thing, but it's also the type of thing that they're every quarter, and you've got to have somebody, not just IT looking at them, but the functional folks in their respective areas have to be looking at them too, because there's functional changes that happen in those as well. It's not just an IT thing. So they've got to, we're working on, and our implementation partner for student is actually, we've contracted with them to kind of help us form this structure a little bit, but we're working on kind of a governing body that's going to have both functional and technical people a part of that. That's going to be kind of a new group that will meet on a quarterly basis and review that stuff, because now also, since all those products are going to be Oracle, some decisions that you make in one side may affect another. And so some of the tables are shared, so like an HCM person can also be that was just an employee before, can also be a faculty member. So that data isn't in a vacuum anymore, separated by an integration. It's all in the same system. And some of you probably already experienced that in other products because you may have a one size fits all, but we haven't been there for quite some time since we started transitioning away from our homegrown. And so we're getting back into that world again a little bit, but like everything else, our main systems are not the only systems. There's hundreds of systems across campus. So, but this one's definitely going to be a big chunk of the important systems that we've got to, I feel like, and my CIOs definitely agrees with this, and has been spearheading a lot of this, is that we've got to put a structure in place so that we don't become stagnant on a product that stays up to date. It's what good does it do you?
How much lead time do they give you to work through that?
Let's see. So the quarterly updates, usually they let us know about, it's a minimum, I would say, of 2 to 3 weeks. So it's not a lot of time from notification. Sometimes on a more typical cycle with student financial planning, because of the FAFSA Complication Act or whatever that was, that has been a little bit more sporadic because they have been scrambling to get their systems updated. But usually the case is they release the release notes and all their baseline configs and all the new stuff for you to do, and they're really good about, even for functional type people, releasing videos that showcase the new changes and stuff and things. And then typically what it is that your test systems will be updated, which for financial aid, we have 2 test and QA. And then 2 weeks later, your production, if nobody if nobody at any of their customers goes, hey, wait a minute, you screwed something up big time, which they have pulled back from a production release, then they'll do another update to your test environments, and then release that when they feel like it's ready. And if they have to do a re-release, that's usually in a following week. But otherwise, you usually have 2 weeks between test and production. So it's not a lot of time, but that's also kind of why we're wanting to get a structure in place where everybody's on board, both functional and technical, so that we can make sure we get the most out of that stuff. And so,
have any discretion as far as the timing of when that gets pushed in production?
no, you don't. It is, it's coming. But I will say this, most of their things that are feature changing, that's mostly opt-in. You have to take advantage of it. So even though most of that sort of thing, you can kind of implement over time. And usually if they've got a big feature change coming up, they will, or structural change, or say reporting views or things like that, they will start that and say, okay, in the fourth quarter of next year, we're gonna implement this. We've got it started now, so you need to transition over this year to moving from these views to those views, or whatever. So they do give you lead time on anything that's structural like that. They deprecate it and move that through the release cycle. So that's pretty good too. So good question. So, and this is just getting back to, I won't get into this very much. It just shows how the tool helps us see all the differences in the configs whenever we copy a new baseline down and stuff. So it highlights the stuff on the right saying, hey, this is new, or it's deleting this or replacing that. So we can scan down through, and some files have no changes. So it's like, all right, we don't have to worry about evaluating that. So it kind of helps us see the different changes within the entire structure, because there's probably about 400 or 500 files that are part of a config that makes a full load, and some of those are CSVs and some of those are Groovy scripts. So source control for us was key in terms of just trying to maintain that in a fast way. And again, this is put these in for details in the slide, just closer up examples of that stuff. So 3 down, 1 to go. I know I've talked about this before, but we are now implementing student financial planning, hoping to release to hit our first go live anyway in the spring of 25. It's just next year, right? So less than a year now, but we don't know. Hopefully Oracle, the roadmap looks good to have the feature set that we need, but it is a product in development. So if they hit their timelines, we'll hit our timelines. It's my understanding now that we were the first university to actually see our config and our data in our test environment. So that was just in April. So, but it looks really good, but proof will be in the pudding. We're not going into it with rose-colored glasses, but we're really, really excited about it, because we are planning on hopefully being able to power down that old system within about 6 months after we fully go live with it. Is kind of our target. Already got ahead of myself again, kind of talked about that cross-functional team. And that team, like I said, it really needs to be able to identify, hey, these things are important to implement versus these things not so much for us. And that way we'll have a strategic direction for these updates that come every quarter, instead of just letting the system drive us or get out of date or that kind of stuff. I think we're going through a little bit of a re-implementation with our implementation partner for student, is also doing some stuff for our HR department to streamline some things there, because they're like, in looking at what we had, we were talking about some of the problems that we had with some of our hiring process stuff. And they're like, oh, are you leveraging this? Well, no. So we decided that this could be much better than what we have it at. And so I think that also brought to light the need for this other team so that it wouldn't just slip by us. You know, we don't want to, like I said, we don't want a purchase system that all of a sudden becomes antiquated like our homegrown system that we had. So it's, and Oracle definitely does a lot of updates to keep that stuff on track, which we've enjoyed so far. There's pain that comes with that too, but updates regular, the stuff people love to hate, right? So then we got into this year, and Oracle did provide us with some pre-release configs, but it really was around ISO processing and things like that. I don't know how close people are to your financial aid in the room, but I'm sure everybody had a huge collective pain this year. Anybody that says they didn't, they're lying. And anybody that was putting out aid offers back in February, March, like I heard about, you tell me those are correct, you're lying. They didn't even have the specs finished by then. So thank goodness we weren't doing those updates in our homegrown system, because that, I think, would have killed my team. It would have been, instead of just having a few folks dedicated to this implementation, we would have the whole team buried in that old code. So, those things aside, we did get those implemented. Oracle was very good at keeping us up to date as far as transparency and stuff. It was not as fast as we wanted, but that was due mainly to the feds not having stuff as fast as they needed. So, and in fact, I think we just got our latest update. See, what is it, Wednesday? I guess it's going, and it's been in test for a couple of weeks now. It's going into prod tonight. That has a bunch of the ISO updates that the feds, I think, just did at the end of April or whatever. So, that's the nice thing. That part doesn't keep me up at night, because I know that's got to keep some developer at Oracle up at night, and it's kind of out of my hands. But I feel for our financial aid folks, definitely, because this whole season for them, not only did they get a new system, but they got a whole huge delay in what they were normally used to. So it's been a trying year for them. But other than that, hopefully it wasn't too much of a whirlwind. Hopefully you found some of it useful. But any other questions for me of any kind, don't have to be limited to by what you saw here. If you've got anything else in general about what we do at Pitt State or anything else, but I'll entertain whatever. All right. Well, everybody's ready to go eat then. That must be so. Yeah, happy hours earlier than that, right? It's all right. Well, thanks a lot. Hopefully it was at least somewhat entertaining or educational, one of the two. And if not, please don't tell me.